Hi, I'm Steve Latham, co-founder and CEO of Donate Stock. Pleased to present our non-cash Giving Tuesday webinar featuring Kelsey Kramer from Giving Tuesday and Russell James from Texas Tech University, one of the preeminent researchers on non-cash giving. I'm recording this after the fact, so we can take you right into the action with Kelsey introducing Giving Tuesday. I hope you enjoy.
So on the next slide, Steve, in addition to our work with leaders and Giving Tuesday, we have this thing called the Giving Tuesday Data Commons. I am curious also in the chat if folks know what that is. So that is where I work, and we work year round to understand how people give, why people give, what influences giving, behaviors, and of course, we measure Giving Tuesday also. We have a team of data scientists, engineers, researchers that work to provide data, insights, and learning to inform our practice. Um, so if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that work, I will share a link in the chat. But we have lots of research and data available. But we're here to talk about Giving Tuesday. So let's do it. This here on the screen is Giving Tuesday sort of by the numbers. So last year, 36.1 million total participants in the US alone. To put that into perspective, that's about 10% of the US population. And really importantly, we saw that number grow. So we saw a growth in the number of people engaged in Giving Tuesday last year. I'll talk a little bit more about why that's so important in an upcoming slide. On the next slide, I just want to make an important note is that Giving Tuesday, while it is a very important fundraising day, and we're going to talk a lot about fundraising and the financial aspect of Giving Tuesday today, is not only a fundraising day. So when we break down that 36.1 million people, it's a combination of ways that people are giving. So 16.6 million people advocated for a cause or sort of told their story. 9.2 million people volunteered. 12.9 people donated goods or items, and 18.5 million people donated. And those plus signs that you see are those increases year over year. Yep, next slide. Thank you, Steve. And even though we are not a fundraising movement, there were a lot of funds raised on Giving Tuesday last year. So 3.6 billion with a B, was donated last year, we estimate. This is an estimate that we are able to provide by working with a collaborative of about 55 data partners. And year over year, we see this increase in the amount of funds raised for communities around the country. We hope this continues in the years ahead. And really importantly, I want to talk about 2024. So I mentioned this 36.1 million people participating. We've seen participation rates in giving sort of slowly drop year over year, particularly small and mid-sized donors. But in 2024, with Giving Tuesday, we saw that growth, which was a really exciting and important moment when we're seeing these sector-wide trends be sort of negative, these donor engagement trends slowly shrinking. We measure that through the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which I can also put into the chat. But so Giving Tuesday was a really important moment. We saw that engagement grow or have a sort of a spark in the year. On the next slide, so what this slide is showing you is that people participate in many different ways by giving a combination of their time, their voice, their advocacy. Giving Tuesday is a really perfect moment for volunteerism. In addition to the value that volunteers provide to your organizations, they can be part of a sort of longer run strategy to mobilize resources. Research from one of our friends, Nathan Dietz, shows that volunteers often go on to become financial donors. So providing stable financial support during the first quarter of the year when giving rates typically dip. So if you are not running a fundraising campaign or want to run an additional campaign alongside your fundraising campaign, getting volunteers activated and engaged in your organization on Giving Tuesday is really important. We have some other data from our Giving Pulse data set that shows that volunteers are often a more reliable source of support during quieter fundraising periods. So getting those folks engaged on the day of Giving Tuesday so that they can support your organization year round is really important. Next slide. So lastly, something that we hear, and I'm sure this is been on your mind is that Giving Tuesday is too loud. So, how do we stand out? These are all really fair questions. It is a really active day, but we are competing for people's attention every day of the year, right? And Giving Tuesday is a moment where the average person is more clued in than ever to their giving. People might not be thinking about their giving every day, but on Giving Tuesday, maybe people are thinking about that a little bit more. So tapping into that energy and that awareness is really important. As I mentioned, we run something called the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and that data set highlighted in 2022 that Giving Tuesday for the first year ever surpassed New Year's Eve as the biggest day for new donor acquisition. So this surge in giving also presents a unique opportunity to get new givers, right? Or new recurring givers who can support your organization long term, ensuring that you get those donors on Giving Tuesday and retain them over time so that they can support your organization long past Giving Tuesday. Um, so I hope you kind of see those high level stats and are inspired to participate or build a Giving Tuesday campaign. I have a few just suggestions as you're starting to plan for Giving Tuesday. Some suggestions for what to think about when you're doing so on the next slide. So keep your goals simple. Don't try and hit every new opportunity that I mentioned or that you might be reading about. You might be feeling overwhelmed. Try something new and pick just one thing to try. If you have a year-long fundraising strategy or you have a year-end strategy that you're running right now, you don't need to invent something totally new for Giving Tuesday. Tether it to your existing plans. Tell human stories and clearly let your audience know what you want them to do on Giving Tuesday. So if you're running a fundraising campaign, make sure your audience knows and has clear places to donate. That might sound really intuitive, but if you're not clear for your audience what you're asking them to do on Giving Tuesday, what is the call to action? Make sure that is super clear in running your campaign. And ensure that there are ways for non-monetary support. As I mentioned, those people can go on to be your biggest champions, your potential future donors. And then the last thing I will say before we turn it over to Russell is bring in a core support team. So making sure if you're a small team or you don't have a team that is regularly supporting your fundraising campaigns, ask your colleagues or your volunteers to be part of your campaign so that it is easier for you to manage. Don't try and do it all yourself. I am happy to share a little bit more in the Q&A. These are just some resources that we have available. We'll make sure that you have all the links to these as well. But I think that is it for me for now. Turn it over to you, Russell.
Well, thanks so much. So I'm just sharing some ideas that I think will be helpful, a bit of data as well, so that we move beyond just the stories that we can share to the actual data. In this case, data on the power of asset gifts, looking at a little over 1 million nonprofit tax returns. So the next slide, we'll take a look at the difference in this kind of research. Sometimes you might go to a presentation on best practices, but it's really just what the big organizations do. However, what we're going to look at is something different. We're going to look at what growing fundraising organizations do differently. So if we go to the next slide, the idea that we're going to investigate is the power of asset gifts. Now, why do we expect that shifting donors to asset gifts or sharing the asset donor stories will lead to current and future fundraising growth? Well, there's lots of research reasons. Asset gifts tend to feel relatively smaller because the reference point is wealth rather than disposable income. These gifts also remind us of our wealth. It helps to mentally reclassify our assets. It's donation relevant, not just our pocket change or disposable income. It's actually a way that we can really actually help donors by showing them how to give in a more tax efficient way. So it does reflect real donor centeredness. requires a little bit of fundraiser expertise, and taking some time to know what you're talking about and to provide value to clients is powerful. They're actually more social than cash from a sociological perspective. And bottom line is that appreciated asset gifts are just cheaper because of the double tax benefits. If we go to the next slide, we'll take a look at the basic concept that to come away with, which is that if you're only asking for cash, you're asking small. When we look at the next slide, the idea is illustrated in this simple idea. Wealth, it turns out, is not held in cash. It is held in non-cash assets. If you're only asking from the cash bucket, you're asking from the small bucket. That's not where the wealth is held. That's where disposable income is held. So the next slide shows us some ideas here. One of the reasons we want to talk about these is it helps donors. Appreciated asset gifts are objectively cheaper. If I write you a check, I get a tax deduction for that. Maybe I can use it, maybe I can't. But if instead I make a gift of appreciated assets like appreciated stocks, I not only get a tax deduction of the same size if I've owned it for more than a year, but I also get to avoid paying capital gains taxes. And that's an advantage I can take that I can use even if I'm not itemizing. The next slide gets us into the one of the simple comparisons. Now, we actually looked at the tax returns from nonprofit organizations, over 1 million of them from every e-filed IRS Form 990 over a 6-year period. And so I want to start with a simple comparison here. We're going to look at 2 different kinds of organizations, those receiving only cash gifts, those receiving any kind of non-cash gifts in the middle. And then on the right, we're going to look at nonprofits that specifically receive securities non-cash gifts. So at the next slide, we'll take a look at the comparison. And what we're looking at here is the 5-year combined average growth in total contributions from fundraising. Now, I want to explain this slide for just a moment because what we see on the left-hand side is among those organizations, they've got to be raising at least $1 million a year over this 5-year period that were cash-only organizations, both at the beginning and end of the period. Their total contributions growth combined was 11%, the same as the inflation rate over that period of time. If we instead compare that to organizations that both at the start and at the finish were including gifts of securities, their growth rate over that period was 6 times greater. It's a 6-fold greater growth rate over that 5-year period. Now, that's actually even a greater growth rate if they switched from starting out as cash only and then moved to securities and cash. But even within these organizations that stayed consistently in their lane, we see this massive, massive difference in growth. By the way, one of the reasons that this data is particularly powerful is this was a bit before the rise of donor-advised funds, which sort of conceals those from the IRS Form 990s. And so we're actually to see this relationship a bit more directly. The next slide shows a different analysis, which is, hey, is it just because non-cash organizations are bigger? The next slide shows us the analysis on that. And indeed, it's not. We see this same relationship at every size of fundraising organization. Whether it's over $10 million, whether it is something that is $100,000 to $500,000, we see there is this consistent split. Now, the numbers are a bit bigger for the small organizations because it's easier to double or triple if you're not raising that much money. Question in the stat, in the chat, have things changed since 2015? We don't see any big changes other than we can't see as much of the data because it's going through DAFs and it comes into the organizations as cash, even though the donors are making it as the asset gift. So that's why we like this data a bit better. The next slide dives into another topic, which is not the yes versus no. Are you accepting those securities gifts? But what happens statistically as an organization shifts their total contributions pool more towards cash or more towards securities or real estate? And what we see is as that contribution contributions start shifting more towards cash, we see a drop in total combined contributions. As it starts shifting more towards securities, the impact of a 10 percentage point increase in the contributions mix towards securities shows a growth by 18% overall. The next slide gives us a little bit of an experiment that shows why we do want to talk about tax benefits. Not only do we have national empirical data that shows the tax benefits really do matter, but we can randomly assign people to different description of a gift of stocks. And if we add that tax benefit, people are more interested in making the gift. Now, as the next slide points out, we know that the tax motivation isn't the reason for the gift. If you just want to keep as much money as possible, then never give anything to anyone, but it is a way to make the gift more efficient. So on the next slide, we get to the end. I do want to mention that, hey, I've got lots and lots of data on this, lots of slides, books, papers. If you're interested, even videos, interested in any of that, it's all free. Just go to encouragegenerosity.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll send it to you that way. So I'll go ahead and end there and say thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Russell. As always, amazing data, and love your ability to really bring the high points, like what's the top line, and the big takeaways to all this morass of data. So thank you for that. So I get the pleasure now to talk about non-cash giving more writ large and all the different ways. And then we'll walk through a playbook for you, or a timeline of events to help you make the most of the giving season. So let's start with picking up on what Russell just talked about, where our assets held. What's most important to note is 74% of giving comes from individuals. If you include the foundations, which money comes from individuals, and bequest from individuals, 93% of $600 billion comes from individuals making giving decisions to the nonprofit organizations they care about. And if you look at, again, building on what Russell was talking about, where their wealth is held, cash is generally 5 to 10% of their assets. For larger, more affluent households, it's less. It's the investments, it's real estate, it's other art, vehicles, et cetera. But that's where the wealth is held. It's where the people have the most to give. And echoing Russell's comments, it feels like a smaller gift. When I can give from a big portfolio, giving $10,000 from that is a lot easier than if I'm trying to take it out of my checking account. So making it easier for people to donate from their where their wealth is concentrated is really the big opportunity for nonprofits. Let's start with donor advised funds. They are all the rage. There's a lot of exciting awareness around DAFs. There's DAF Day now, which is really a great way to kind of galvanize support around educating donors on DAFs, getting donors to give from their DAFs. Today, there's a little over 1 million DAF accounts, donor advised fund accounts, individuals. There's almost $300 billion sitting in DAF accounts under management today that are available to be distributed out to nonprofits. If people were donating, liquidating their DAF every 3 years and paying out 1/3 of that a year, that would be about $100 billion per year. Today, average actual giving is about $55 billion. So there's still about $45 to $50 billion per year available in DAF grants to be given out to charities and nonprofit organizations if they ask and if they make it easy. So this is a really big opportunity. Again, I'm going to give you a high-level flyby on each of these. And we actually are, as we'll talk about in the Q&A session, we are actually introducing an Easy DAF product for our customers, so it can easily start receiving DAF grants as well at no cost, to make it easy and efficient for donors and yourselves. So if you're interested in that, just email easydaf@donatestock.com and we can get back to you on that. But we'll be talking more about that when we actually formally launch the product in the next couple of weeks. Appreciate securities. We're kind of where we cut our teeth, really the hardest stack to process in terms of ways of giving, but also, again, the biggest unlock opportunity. Today, there's over 100 million Americans own $50 trillion, more than $50 trillion in appreciated securities. So these are stocks, mutual funds, ETFs. What's also interesting is there's only 90 million people that donate per year. There's over 100 million investors out there. So there are more people actually own investments than actually give to charity. It's a pretty high probability, 95%, 100% of your major donors own stock. And it's also the most tax advantage way for them to give. As Russell was illustrating earlier, if they donate appreciated securities, they don't have to pay a tax on the gain. You don't have to pay it because you're tax exempt. And then they can also itemize. It's not just for itemizers, though. That's again, the most important takeaway for stock gifting. If people are trying to figure out how to support you this giving season and they have stocks like Nvidia or Apple or Google or Microsoft or any of these stocks that have just had incredible runs over the last 5, 10 years, for them to give that to you, even if they don't itemize the gift, they're still avoiding a ton of taxes that would be paid if they sold the stock to give you the cash. That's what you never want to do. So anytime you're having a conversation with a donor, um, say, give us your pre-tax gift. Don't sell the stock, just give us your stock or your ETFs. Another interesting data point about stock gifting is the size of the gift. On average, about 7,400 last year. It's up this year. Before adjusting, it's over 10,000 per gift this year. And what's interesting too is is the recurring nature of stock gifting. We're seeing more and more donors make subsequent gifts to the same organizations. It just becomes part of their giving strategy. It's also part of their portfolio management strategy for managing their stocks and their investments. If they have big gains, if they sell the stock, they're going to pay a lot of tax. If they donate that stock, they can avoid that. So we see donors who are getting ahead of their charitable, their annual giving throughout the year by just harvesting gains by giving them to the causes that they care about on a consistent basis. And repeat donors give a lot more, as we know. So it's a great retention tool, not just to think of as a one-time, lifetime gift. It's something people do every year throughout the year. Crypto, kind of the shiny object that everyone's been trying to get their head around the last few years. I like to kind of manage expectations that there is a lot of crypto out there. The problem is it's highly concentrated. You're not going to get a lot of crypto gifts, but you could get some really big ones. So it's definitely a non-cash way that you want to incorporate into your menu of ways for donors to support your cause. Uh, Roughly 10 to 20% of US households own some crypto, but like I mentioned, highly concentrated. The top 1% crypto wallets own about 90%. So there are some whales out there with a ton of it, and if they are your supporters, you definitely want to make it easy for them to give to share some of their gains with you. A few data points: millennials, most common owners. They generally are not the wealthiest, but they certainly are very generosity minded and happy to share their gains with you. And a lot of times they have more crypto than cash or other investments. So it's a great way to not just harvest gains now or donations, but to build that pipeline of future giving as well. Bitcoin is the most commonly donated coin. Just FYI, you might get asked this, gifts over $5,000 require third-party appraisal. The good news is you as a nonprofit are not required to provide that. In fact, you're not supposed to. The donor is supposed to do that. But that's really more of an issue between them with their accountant. Again, you're the first to know, we'll be introducing our Easy Crypto product next month. So you'll be able to, for our customers who are using us for stock, you'll be able to receive DAF grants and crypto grants as well, gifts, I should say. So more to come on that. I added vehicle and real estate in here. You guys may know Charitable Adult Ride Services, CARS, as they're known, careasy.org. They're our partner for vehicles and real estate. These are in Russell's slides. I was blown away by how many cars are gifted a year. It's about 500,000 cars per year. Cars, the company, the organization, which is a nonprofit, they process almost 100,000 cars a year. So people, why do they give cars away or real estate? One, it's a bequest, like a legacy gift. Secondly, probably most common is they inherit a car, or they have a parent who goes away goes in senior living or just no longer able to drive, and they have a car and they just don't feel like messing with the sale or the repairs or any of that, and they just want to give it away and give it to the causes they care about. So these are fairly complex transactions. It requires some external expertise, but organizations like CARS, I'm happy to recommend, can make that really easy for you. So let's talk about the roadmap for success. Time check here. Good, we're plenty of time for Q&A. But I'm going to walk you through each of these steps, but here's a roadmap, and I'll share this with you at the end. Again, these slides are available to you, so we'll have these out to you hopefully by the end of the day. But I'm going to walk you through kind of a timeline starting, in the next couple of weeks through the end of the year. So starting with in early November, you want to optimize your website for non-cash giving. We'll talk about this. This is really probably the biggest opportunity for improvement that we see across the board. Very few organizations in my opinion, have made ways to get prominent on their site, and organize that in such a way that it's really easy for donors to quickly see what are all the ways I can support your organization. And I'll share with you a couple of best practices here. These are a couple examples of pages created. These are just some I grabbed for stock, but the same for donor advised funds, cryptos, cars, real estate, qualified charitable distributions, planned giving. Think of all the different ways people can support you. Having some content explaining the why. Why would you donate this to us? What are the benefits to me? And then how do I do it? And there's a lot of talk about meeting the donor where they are, and that really starts with making it easy for them to find more tax advantage ways for them to support you and making it easy for them to do that. Here's an example of what we view as really a best practice for showcasing ways to give on your website. Most ways to give pages, you have to scroll and scroll and to find, and they have, maybe no text or imagery, just copy, and you're really just having to kind of scroll and scan with your eyes. Think about, we're visual creatures. We quickly identify things by looking at icons. We don't like to have to scroll. Think about, people are kind of spoiled. The Amazon experience, everyone expects everything to be easy, intuitive, right there in front of me. I shouldn't have to search very hard. It starts with your ways to give page, making it very prominent in your top level nav. I like to, point out examples. World Central Kitchen, one of our most successful customers, they do great because they have ways to give right next to the donate button on the top nav. So on your way to that donate button that we're all programmed to go to in the upper right next to that is ways to give. You click on that and they show all the different ways you can support them and make it really easy. And you click there to go to the button to execute the gift. These are really simple, easy things to do, but they can be transformational in helping you grow your non-cash giving. Listing them above the fold, using icons and text, linking down. You can have all the content below here about your stock or DAF or crypto or planned giving or pledges or peer-to-peer fundraisers. You can have all that below, but you don't want to have them to scroll to figure out that you have that. You want them to see that at the top, click on that icon, and go to that section on your page. Then, once your site's optimized, you want to educate your donors. You want to inform them that there are other ways to support our mission. And I think this is, again, so important. Most donors have just been programmed to come online, hit your donate button, choose, how do I want to give, how much I want to give in one of the boxes you're offering me, and put on my credit card. That is where they have the least to give, as we talked about. So educating them proactively, letting them know, do you have a stock portfolio? Do you have an IRA? Are you over 72 with an IRA and you have required minimum distributions that you could give to us against, like an IRA gift or a qualified charitable distribution? Do you have crypto? Do you have a donor advised fund? Did you know we accept cars and boats and real estate? All of those things, if you can educate your donors of all these other ways they can support you, and you can't just tell them once. Who's ever changed their behavior by being told something once, unless it was your parent telling you in a very strict way? Otherwise, it takes frequency and repetition to really resonate with and create a lasting impression. So inviting them to share their assets with you, share their wealth with you, align their financial and philanthropic objectives with you. Those are all the keys to unlocking donor wealth as a way to diversify and grow your funding. And again, making this part of your core messaging. Ways to give should be right up there with donate. You can donate, or there's all these other ways to give that you can in a more tax efficient way. So let's get into Giving Tuesday. A few best practices. I think having a Giving Tuesday page is kind of a no-brainer. It is a global phenomenon. I mean, 36 million people in the US last year, that's over 10% of the population participated, and that's growing every year. So create a page, and like I said, we'll share all this with you, that you have a bunch of assets that you can download. The GivingTuesday.org, they have everything you need, toolkits, content for educating your donors. But create a page and invite people to make a pledge. Hey, tell us now that you can make a pledge on Giving Tuesday, and we'll remind you. Because things happen, people get busy, they assume that they're going to be free to do it that day, but having them to kind of put a little skin in the game, tell you that, I think is a great trick and a great way to just help cement that intention to give on that day. And then having announcements. Again, one announcement is not going to do it. You need to have some repetition, some consistency, some frequency. That's how you get resonance. Let them know like about Giving Tuesday. Send them a reminder after Thanksgiving. Keep in mind it's the day after Cyber Monday. So if you announce it in through email, through social, maybe direct mail, if you're doing videos, you get a radio station for public media, you got your own media, you can put it on there, or you maybe get PSAs from local TV or radio to let them know about Giving Tuesday, that you're participating and people can support you. Remind them, throughout the month. Send them a reminder that after Thanksgiving is a good day to do it, the Black Friday, and then on Monday, Cyber Monday, support us tomorrow, and then today's the day for the announcement. I think Kelsey would tell you and ask her in the Q&A, I don't think you can over communicate. Sometimes orgs are afraid, like we don't want to overwhelm them. I think the data shows that people, if anything, they feel like they're under communicated to. And Kelsey, you can tackle this in the Q&A. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I've heard it and I think it's compelling. And then after Giving Tuesday, there's still another 29 days of giving, and that's when a lot of people are going to do a lot of their asset giving. So Giving Tuesday is like the think of that as the starting gun for the race to the year end, the sprint. But what's interesting is 40% of stock, and I presume crypto gifts, occur in December. So it's pretty amazing if you think about how many people wait till the end of the year, but that's when they do a lot of their tax planning. That's when they talk to their accountant about what their exposure looks like, how much they can give, how much they should give. It's when a lot of people are really getting serious about that. With stock, that's also when people do a lot of their, they do what's called tax loss harvesting. They do their tax plan. They look at trimming their portfolios and thinking about what they want to own going into the year. That's a great time to be top of mind for donating appreciated securities. Same with donor advised funds. That's probably not as driven by an ended deadline because they've already gotten the contribution or the deduction when they made that. But reminding them that instead of writing us a check, just give us from your donor advised fund. They can give you a lot more, and ultimately, let's deplete those DAFs as quickly as possible. So just sending those reminders starting the 8th. I would give it, the rest of the week after Giving Tuesday because you've hit them pretty hard leading up to that. So Tuesday the 2nd is the 8th, Tuesday the 2nd, Monday's the 8th. Those are also, if I could show you right now, we had a chart showing the ramp in stock gifting between December 3rd or 4th and about the 23rd. That's when it's literally up and to the right the entire month. There's also a little burst that those few days after Christmas, right before end of year, we'll see a bunch of people jump in to those last minute gifts as well. Now, resources. Again, we're going to share with you the Giving Tuesday resources. For our customers, we have a bunch of resources available too. All these files are available. You can download them, use them, socialize them, tag us, and we'll repurpose or repost and socialize and like and share your content as well. We have toolkits, the playbook, year-end resources, all of this. Again, this will be links to this in the email we send to follow up. So again, kind of reflecting on the roadmap, optimizing your site for non-cash giving. Make sure you do this first. You've just got to get off the reliance on cash and credit. There's still a lot of economic uncertainty. People might be feeling a little tight on cash, but long on assets. And so let's invite them to share those with you throughout the month. Then leaning into Giving Tuesday. And then once that's over, you've got, again, another 29 days of giving that you can facilitate. And again, being persistent but polite, and reminding them of the benefits to them, what's in it for them, and how to be really donor-centric and meeting them where they are. So parting thoughts, like I said, I've kind of sound like a broken record, but now's the time to educate your donors on ways to give and making that very prominent in your site and your communications. The other thing that, and I stole this from a consultant that we work with, you don't have to know the answer to every question. It's okay to say, I don't know, when someone asks you a complicated question. The good news is you're having a dialogue. And think about this with major donors. If you're having the conversation with them about assets, even if you don't know the answer, that's fine. It gives you a reason to follow up with them. Say, I don't know the exact answer to that. Let me confirm and get back to you. That's continuing the dialogue. And this is really a great time and a great way to do that. What we've seen is if you're the one educating your donor, if you're the philanthropic advisor educating the donor on more tax advantage ways to give so they can give more and save more, there's a lot of gratitude that comes with that. You're always going to be in the driver's seat for their giftable assets. So you can really do a lot to help them become better donors, smarter donors, more tax efficient donors, have more money left over to live their lives and give. But it also can benefit you as that strategic advisor to them. Again, promoting ways to give should be strategic. It should be part of all your communications. Don't just put a link to your donate page and bypass that. You want to make sure before they hit the donate button that they've thought of, or at least given the opportunities to give other ways. And again, changing behavior takes time. It takes repetition. So again, no silver bullet. There's no easy one announcement, one way to do it. But if you make that part of your protocol, part of your program, you will benefit and see trajectory changes that Russell has talked about. That once you do that, you'll realize that it can be a game changer. So with that, let's dive into the Q&A. I have not been able to check and see if and Kelsey can come back on there. Okay, Q&A is working. Cool. We've got a couple here. I've got a couple kind of to start things off with, though. Some questions like Russell. One thing we didn't get into, but would love to hear your thoughts on what are the implications of the new legislation for non-cash giving next year? I know a lot of this is going to kick in from the OBBBA, but I know there's some kind of nuances there. But do you want to speak to maybe kind of what that means, what that means to fundraisers?
Sure, Steve. Of course, if you give me 3 hours, I will also take 3 hours to answer
Yeah,
that question. But a couple of
2 minutes.
high-level things to keep in mind is that tax deductions actually are going to become less valuable next year. So this is the year we want to target for pulling forward those deductions. Stuffing things into the DAF now, making those big gifts now is what we are advising. Now, the other thing that happens is that after that starting next year, well, you're going to lose some of your deductions, that first 0.5% of your AGI, those will be lost. And so because of that, some people are going to want to engage in bunching, the idea of, hey, let's pick a target year where we push everything into a DAF, we have a great big deduction, and then in the other years, we will just take the standard deduction. Now, that's even more important now because next year, the standard deductions, those are bumped up again. We had that happen in 2018. Those things are being bumped up again. The last thing to remember is this, which is one of the reasons why giving appreciated assets is so powerful, is that you're not just getting a tax deduction, maybe you can use it, maybe you can't, but even more powerfully, you are engaging in income avoidance. So in other words, that profit that you made, you never have to recognize that now, because if you donate the appreciated assets, just use your cash to buy brand new versions of that asset. Don't change your portfolio, just wipe out the capital gain. That's more powerful now because we have a lot of things in the new tax code that are tax benefits that go away as your reported income goes up. So if instead of selling it and reporting the income, you donate it, it keeps your reported income low, and that keeps you in a place where you're still going to qualify for, say, for example, this new deduction for exemption for people who are age 65 and above, or the new increase in the SALT cap limitations from 10,000 to 40,000 that phases out at certain income levels. All of those things are protected when you engage in this smarter charitable giving of making appreciated asset gifts.
Awesome. And I think you were saying that some charitable giving won't be as valuable next year because of that 0.5% floor, like the first 5.5% of AGI is not deductible. Is that what you're getting at?
That, and also the fact that we can no longer take a 37% tax deduction. Our tax deduction for charitable deductions only is going to be capped at 35%. So for people in the highest tax bracket, that means if they give this year, they can get 37 cents on the dollar. If they wait till next year, it's capped at 35 cents on the dollar. So we have both a top and a bottom. This is even more extreme for those that are making corporate gifts. Corporate giving starting next year has got to be above 1% of their net income and below 10% of their net income. So it's this narrow window that they have to get into, which means most people are advising, tax advisors are advising corporations, use a DAF so that you can target years where you will be in that window and other years where you don't make transfers.
Awesome. I would add one piece to that, which I think, again, what's important to note with appreciated assets is a lot of times, even if they don't itemize, it's still a home run for them just because they can avoid the capital gains tax. That's something to really keep in mind is whether I can see that floor hurting cash giving actually a little more than appreciated assets for the reasons that people don't care if whether or not they itemize, they're still saving a lot of money. So
Well, we did get a nice trade-off, which is we've got for cash gifts going directly to the organizations, we do get an above-the-line tax deduction up to $1,000 starting next year. So we
yeah,
lost some, gained some.
yeah. No, I think that's a great call out as well. As everybody can donate up to $1,000 and itemize that, even if they don't, or deduct that even if they don't itemize their taxes next year. Okay, Kelsey, let's talk about Giving Tuesday. We can get too deep into tactics, but are there certain tactics that work better than others in driving participation, whether it's volunteering, giving, socializing? Any like silver bullets that you guys have found work better than others?
I think the thing that we've learned about Giving Tuesday is that the ways that people sort of individualize it for their own organization are the sort of smartest campaigns. So there's not going to be a silver bullet, one magic answer that is, the strategy that everyone should be doing. I think in terms of like tactics to drive participation, I would I'll go with the 3 C's today, like making sure that you're consistent in your messaging and that it's clear. Um, I mentioned this earlier, but what is the CTA for your Giving Tuesday campaign? What are you asking people to do? Make sure it's consistent, make sure it's clear. Steve, you give really good timeline, like making sure that is you're communicating ahead of time what it is you're asking people to do and reminding them. And multi-channel is the third. I'm smushing that into a C. But making sure that it's multi-channel. So you're hitting people across the different channels that you're typically managing to do your donor communication, email, social, on your website, etc. So making sure that you're going across the board on those channels. I mentioned this too, but we have a lot of really good examples of these. We just put out today a blog that has tactics for press. If you're interested in, Steve, you mentioned this, if you're interested in hitting up your local press, tactics for that, tactics for email, and tactics for social, with some really clear, tangible things that you can be doing. I'm realizing that I was putting links into the chat, but I don't think that participants can see my chat responses. I'm not sure, Steve, if we've fixed that, but I think they're only going to hosts and panelists. So I'll make sure that I send all of the links that I've mentioned today to Steve so that you can get them to participants after. But yeah, we have all those resources available.
Awesome. There was a question Mallory asked, is it recommended like to include non-cash giving throughout the Giving Tuesday campaign or as a standalone? I think the answer is both.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
The answer is like yes.
Yeah,
The answer is yes. I think they're both, right? Like you want to incorporate that part of your boilerplate messaging of ways to give, ways to support, ways to volunteer, how to get involved, right? Like a broader message. Do you want
yeah,
to volunteer? Do you want to, and again, it's going to vary by organization, but also do you want to support us? Here's all the ways to give, with online donations being a way to give, right? Part of the menu.
yeah.
Anything you can speak to on that? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything that comes to mind.
Yeah,
No,
so
go ahead, Russell.
I'll just jump in and say, yeah, I absolutely agree. You want to constantly be sharing stories of asset donor stories along with your other forms of giving. Just create that menu, because one of the things that it does is it creates a social norm that says, oh, people like us make gifts like this. Like this is a normal kind of a thing to make asset gifts. And so just consistently offer that menu. And because it does create that social norm that can be really powerful.
Yep. Hey, Kelsey, have you seen matching offers as really moving the needle for organizations?
Absolutely. Extremely effective, but not necessary. I would say if you haven't already figured out a matching campaign, it might be a little bit late to do that now. So if you're already like working on your campaign, you're like a little bit overwhelmed. I would say adding a matching component might not be a good strategy. But if you're like wanting to test something new, a matching campaign is a great thing to do on Giving Tuesday. I think we've seen that be really effective in driving making sure people hit their goals like early on in the day and then building on top of those goals throughout the day. So like adding their total dollar goal after they hit that matching campaign be really in a really effective strategy. So like knowing that you're going to try and hit that by a certain point and then exceeding that be a really effective strategy on the day.
And then Russell, kind of not really different path, but it's something that I think a lot of organizations are thinking about, especially those that have relied on federal funding that are now seeing that funding either cut or frozen. Have you have a lot of conversations with people in the industry about non-cash giving. Have you seen that being a driver of more non-cash giving, or a need for resilience, a need to be more creative, a need to diversify and find new source of funding? Does that bubble up in the conversations you're having?
Yeah, so the concern is this: when we start getting into the space of major gifts of assets, okay, so again, major gifts, major life investment gifts, they tend to be gifts of assets, that they're not pocket change gifts. They're not coming from cash. Those go to the strongest organizations, the ones that are going to be most effective in accomplishing my philanthropic goals. And I mention this because if you come out with a message of desperation, that will get you the $50 gift, and it will do so at the cost of your major life investment gifts, because nobody is going to make their major life investment gift to an unstable organization. So I would be very wary of your messaging, that you don't want to communicate the idea that we may be having to close the doors, give us money right away, because you'll get that small cash, but it's very dangerous for the long-term health of the organization to do that. So I'm not saying it's not a crisis. I'm just saying understand how you're communicating that, and making sure you're not communicating that sense of organizational stability that would undermine those major investment gifts.
That's an interesting data point. I honestly had not heard that perspective, but that's pretty useful. One of the things I'll pick out, like to reiterate something you said when you're talking about best practices, not just the biggest organizations, which I think a lot of times we see this happen often where a nonprofit will be looking at a big marquee nonprofit. And it's like, how are they doing it? That must be the best way to do it. That oftentimes is not the best way to do it. I'm not going to say names, but there are quite a few organizations that are incredibly successful marketers that frankly do not, I think, do a very good job meeting the donor where they are on their website in terms of communication, ease, intuitiveness. They tend to make donors jump through a bunch of hoops. The What I love about your study is, look, those that grew the fastest and those on the smaller end of the scale actually had higher relative growth rates, right? Because
Sure.
big gifts can make a bigger splash if you have a smaller budget, and
Hmm.
you get 5% of your donors supersizing their gifts. That can have a huge impact. But one thing that's exciting that I love about where we are in this industry right now is that all of the tools are available to even the smallest orgs. The smallest organization can now receive gifts of stock and crypto and DAF grants and QCDs just as well, just as easily as the biggest, right? You don't have to be a billion-dollar fundraiser to take advantage of all these easy ways, new ways to fundraise. So the democratization of fundraising should empower more organizations, small, mid-size especially, and that's the majority of the organizations on this call today, to use it. It's a level playing field. You have access to the exact same tools that the biggest players do. So I think that's an exciting thing with innovation and technology and the democratization of all these great tools.
Well, and Steve, let me say it should change the way that we have conversations, that we shouldn't be afraid to have asset giving conversations, because if we share a story about a donor who gave an asset and we get into an asset donor conversation, it's fine that there's going to be questions that we're not going to be able to answer. In fact, it's wonderful, because if you ask me a technical question that I'm not going to give you the immediate answer to, well, that's a great question. I'd like to talk to some of our team experts that we work with. Let's get back together. Would you be available in a couple of weeks? I can present some ideas for you. Well, then they can give a call to Steve at Donate Stock or other experts, folks that they're working with, get that planned out, come back to the donor with whatever that answer is, because indeed we do have access to all of that high level sort of information. And really, we want to have those conversations, not because we're going to instantly give them the right answer, but because it's going to give us the next appointment at which we can present all of those answers and present some asset giving opportunities specific to them.
That's a great point. That's kind of resonates with everything we hear, we talk about, is don't be afraid to have those conversations. Even if you don't know all the answers, because it just get the dialogue going. And once you figure it out, the best way to really understand something is you have to go get an answer for a donor. And once you know the answer, then everything else is easy. So, and there's tons of resources available to help now. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Still have quite a few folks on. Appreciate everybody sticking around. I don't know if there's anything in the chat. And if you guys can't see the chat, I'm sorry. I thought this was open to everybody seeing it, but maybe not. Apparently not. Sorry for that, because it's so great seeing all this feedback and comments from everybody. But let me see if there's anything here. There's an interesting question here. Jeanette asked about, do we know how the stats on nonprofit growth has changed since 2015? Russell, I'll let you speak to that and the challenges with the data these days, and maybe how things have changed, in recent years since you did that study.
Yeah, as I mentioned during the presentation, one of the reasons that this is really great to establish the principle and basically the behavioral principle that this works is because when that data was pulled, it was before people were in the common habit of shipping all of their asset gifts, especially stock gifts, through donor advised funds. The problem is that changes our 990 data, so we don't actually see that those were initially stock gifts. So the fact that it's like, yeah, it's a little bit older, but it's actually better data in that way. So the newer data, it's giving us the same answers. It's just a little bit weaker and weaker because we see less and less on the individual organization's 990s.
Yeah, when we did some analysis of 990s as well, realized also one of the benefits of tracking appreciated securities, it's actually called out as a separate section, whereas a lot of others are not. It'd be great to see if at some point they could break out DAF grants, for example, versus cash. That would be really awesome to see. It's not there today, so we'll see what the IRS has to say about that in the future. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap now. But again, we'll be sending out the presentation, the resources, the video, and any questions you have. You can always reach out to us, just nonprofits@donatestock.com, and we can, if you have any questions for Russell or Kelsey, get them to them. But we appreciate you all coming out today. I know you have a lot of webinars. There's a lot of content, a lot going on. So thank you. Your time and interest is highly appreciated. So with that, Russell, Kelsey, thank you all again so much. Appreciate you. Very grateful for your support and participation today and spreading all this knowledge with all these great organizations. So thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks everybody for being here.
Bye.